Welcome to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm your host, Tom Collins, Executive Director of Arizona Citizens Clean Elections Commission.
And I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director for Clean Elections. So, Tom, to kick things off, as a reminder for our audience, you are an attorney. You are in the legal profession, in addition to being our executive director at Clean Elections. And our agency was recently involved in a lawsuit regarding the name of a political party. So, could you give our listeners an update on where that case stands?
Sure. So there is a party in Arizona called the No Labels Party, and they were established by going out and collecting signatures from voters a couple of years ago. So this party this summer decided they wanted to be called something else officially. They wanted to adopt the name the Arizona Independent Party. And they wrote a letter to the Secretary of State and said, will you make this what were called, on official publications and voter registration information, that kind of thing. And the secretary said yes. The commission and a couple of other parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, filed suit against the Secretary of State because that really isn't the process to become a new party. And importantly here, it was going to be confusing. There was evidence around the country that when people have tried to pick similar names, that there had been confusion. And so we went to court, and last month the Superior Court agreed with our position and declared the Secretary's efforts there to be invalid.
So, Tom, just to clarify, I guess from the candidate perspective and the voter perspective, this doesn't change anything in regards to ballot access. No Labels is still a political party. They are still on the primary election ballot. Is that correct?
That's right. And I think that's a very important point, Gina, and it's something we talked about in the suit. It's one of the confusing things, right? Some of the folks who were associated with this or talked about this would say this is about getting, quote unquote, independence, a level playing field as far as getting on the ballot. And the reality is that this party, because it's a party, is going to be on the primary ballot. And independent candidates, that is to say candidates who aren't in a party, they do have a higher threshold to get on the ballot, but they skip the entire primary process. So it's kind of one of those things where the way that this was framed for political consumption is very, very different than how it actually worked in practice. And that's the kind of confusion that the commission was concerned about.
And Tom, anytime we talk about independence, I'm going to throw this out there. Independent voters, you can vote in the primary election. We've got a July 21st primary election coming up. You absolutely can vote in that primary election. And I think, this might help clarify too. So in our primaries, it's a specific ballot for each party. So you have one ballot that is for Democrats, one ballot that is for Republicans, one ballot that is for No Labels, and then we also have the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. And so we have these 5 different ballots. And so if you are a registered voter that is with one of those recognized parties, you're automatically getting that ballot to vote. That's your party. You're going to vote your party's ballot, because the point of a primary, again, is to decide who your political party's nominee is to go to the general election and compete against all of the other parties to actually win that election. So independence, the way you vote in the primary is you have to select one of those ballots that's available to you. So for July, Tom, it looks like the Republicans are having an open primary, the Democrats are having an open primary, and No Labels is having an open primary. So independent voters, they can choose one of those 3 ballots to vote in the primary election on July 21st.
The reality is that, according to our research, the vast majority of Arizona voters know this. Now, they may not participate, right? Participation of independents in the primary is, admittedly low, but the information is out there. It's been part of Arizona law for a long time. And so there's been a lot of muddying there. And, my hope is, and I think that this is something that we do, through our website and our voter guide and other places to try to clarify this for voters. So, Gina, you're absolutely right. If you're an independent and you're coming up on July, you're going to want to either contact your county recorder, if you vote by mail, to have them send you either a Democratic, Republican, or No Labels ballot. Or if you go there on Election Day, you're going to ask the person there what ballot you want.
So when voters are voting in our upcoming primary, one thing that's important is to know where the candidates stand on the issues. And speaking of research of clean elections, we know that voters really care about water security right now. Tom, do you want to kind of give a sneak peek into what we did this last weekend?
So we taped a new episode of Inside the Issues focused on water security in Arizona. That should be coming out in May. And, I got to say that this was a great conversation. We had leading experts from around the state, folks who really know their stuff. And so it was informative, but it's also accessible, I think.
Yeah, it was easy to understand. I mean, I am by no means an expert in water policy. And so I learned a lot and it was interesting too. So it definitely kept my attention and it gave me a really good, I think, foundation for understanding where Arizona is with the state of our water supply, what we're looking at towards the future. So I think voters, if you tune into it, you're really going to be interested and you're going to walk away learning a lot about water security in our state.
That's right.
And, speaking of voting, let's keep on that trend with our update here.
Right.
Tom, I know that a lot of people like to drop off their ballots when they vote, right? That's one of the options for returning it. They return their voted ballot, and that goes through a signature verification process because, again, every ballot that is cast before it's actually ran through the tabulation machine, counties are absolutely making sure this is a valid ballot. This was submitted by somebody who is an actual eligible registered voter. So they're verifying it's legitimate before it's tabulated. But we have a new law that is going to hopefully speed up the time that will take to get some results. You want to talk about that?
So basically, the upshot of this law is that instead of dropping off your ballot with your signature on the envelope that you have, you would present your identification at the polling location and get checked in, and then send that ballot through the tabulation. So, the big hang-up that folks, certainly in the legislature, some members of the legislature get upset about is the time between how much time it takes to verify your signature and then to count your ballot. So when folks turn in their ballot on election day, right, that ballot's going to get counted, but after it's verified against your voter record. This allows you to have that up front. You have your ID, you have your ballot, and it's tabulated right there. So, we'll see.
And, it's really kind of the best of both worlds, because if you think about it, I enjoy voting from home. I don't want to have to wait in line. I don't want to be in a polling place to make these decisions. I want all my materials in front of me. I want to sit at my table and mark my ballot. But it's also really fun to actually feed your ballot through the machine because it's that immediate kind of gratification. I did it. I know it went through the machine. I know that it was accepted, and I'm going to go wear my I voted sticker proudly now. So, and again, it's going to help speed up getting those results quicker. So I think it's a really great option now for voters. But of course, if you don't want to stand in line and show your ID and feed it through the machines, you can absolutely still just drop it off, and the counties will verify your identity through that signature verification process.
So, the other thing happening in elections is we've just wrapped up the challenge period for candidates, right? So candidates are in a flurry to get their signatures, their petition signatures to get on the ballot in, and then there's a period of time where a whole bunch of lawyers run down and file lawsuits to say, well, you should be off the ballot because you didn't have enough signatures, or you should be off the ballot because you filled out your nomination paper incorrectly, all kinds of stuff. That all happens in a real compressed period that we've just concluded. But that's just one step. So now that that's over, what happens now, Gina?
Yeah. So, some of those outcomes from the court, they can vary. It could be, okay, we've gone through the process and the court decides, the candidate, they're going to stay on the ballot. They met the requirements. They're going to remove them from the ballot. The candidate themselves may actually just decide to withdraw. And then that, ends the case right there. So what we have to do as election officials is see what those outcomes are, because that will ultimately determine who the final candidates are that are printed on the primary election ballot.
And finally, on May 19th, local elections are happening. We'll have local elections in Cochise County, Coconino County, Maricopa County, Pinal County, and we have details for each election linked in the show notes.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Ballot AZ. I'm Gina Roberts.
And I'm Tom Collins. We'll see you next week.